I want to give a shout out to Cure the Boss for sending me this link to the interview of the two captured American servicemen. What is strange to me about the interview is how talkative the soldiers are. I thought it was name, rank, and serial number, not talk, talk, talk. And from what the soldiers are saying, not only were the Ukrainians not prepared, but also these American soldiers are not prepared. They are a bunch of weekend warriors, most of them out of the reserves, never saw any real combat. And they thought that this was going to be a cakewalk. But evidently, they found out the contrary. What I've learned is when you are asked a question, you don't volunteer information. Just answer the questions that are asked. And these soldiers are filling in the blanks. Now, people are saying that, that they are being forced to say this, they are reading something. They don't appear to be reading. This is all coming off the top of their heads. After being captured, this is what the soldiers want to say to the Ukrainians.
You're gonna have to fight your own damn war. We don't wanna fight no more.
Can you please tell us where are you from exactly? What part of America? And how did you come to Ukraine, to this war? What was your journey like?
Yes. I'm originally from Alabama in the United States. In January, February, and March of this year, I watched in the news what was being shown, what was going on in Ukraine. It appeared that a large number of people were fleeing their homes. They were fleeing to other countries. It seemed like they needed help, and I wanted to see if that was the actual case and if I could be of any help. I do have a military background, so that included up to fighting if needed, but that wasn't my primary reason for coming. I was in the U.S. Army for U.S. Army Reserves for 12 years, from 2002 to 2014.
Did you take part in any of the operations?
I was deployed to Iraq in support roles 2 times.
So you had an actual fighting experience, combat experience?
No combat experience, no. My specialty, my military occupational job was chemical operations specialist. That was primarily the detection and decontamination of chemical, biological, and radiological weapons if they were ever used. Luckily, during my time of service, they were never used on U.S. forces, so I never had to do my job. But it meant that every unit in the Army has to have someone with that job with them in case it happens. So my first deployment, I was sent with a transportation company to fill that role. They were taking supplies, all kinds of military supplies from Kuwait up into Iraq. I stayed in Kuwait and helped with the operations and logistics of that unit since I didn't have to do any decontamination. The second deployment, I was attached to a chemical company that then went to Baghdad and became a convoy escort team. We were armed in case there was conflict, but luckily we never experienced any direct combat, and our job was to move personnel around Baghdad for their various meetings about rebuilding that country and turning over the security and the government to the Iraqi government and military forces.
How did you come to Ukraine?
So after watching the news and deciding that I wanted to come and see if I could help, I already had some of the equipment from my previous Army days, but I did purchase with my own money any gear that I thought I needed and I did not have. I bought my own plane ticket to leave Atlanta on April 12th. I flew from Atlanta to Warsaw, Poland. I stayed in Warsaw for just a couple days, and then I bought a bus ticket from Warsaw to Lviv.
So you went on your own?
I went
from Warsaw to...
Right, 100% on my own. Arrived in Ukraine on the 15th of April. At that point, I didn't really know where to go, what options I had. But in the States, I'd heard about the creation of the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine. So I did look them up while I was in Lviv, and they asked a few questions and then said they would take me. And I started the process of moving up to where they were. I did join the Legion. I was with them for about 11 days. On the third day, I signed a contract, and so I was under contract for 8 days. But all we did was stay on the training camp and train. We did not deploy. We did not see combat.
So they wanted you only to train new recruits or less experienced Ukrainian soldiers, right? Or?
They were planning on sending us to the front, but before that happened, I was very dissatisfied with their training program and with the caliber of people that they had received. There were a large number of people with very limited military experience or no military experience at all, and I did not feel like they were getting good training to send them to the front, so I did not want to go to the front with that unit.
So you're talking about the international unit?
The international legion, yes,
What
yes.
countries do you remember?
There were quite a few. There were Americans, Canadians, British, quite a few South Americans, Brazil, Ecuador. We had one Frenchman. We had one from the country of Georgia. They were all over, but I would say most of them were American, British, and Canadian, and South American.
How many of them there were? How many of you?
Right. We were told that there were 3 companies in our battalion and that 2 had already been sent to the front. So I don't know what their strength was, their numbers. We had 2 platoons in our training camp, and we totaled probably around 70 or so. After I decided I did not want to deploy with them, I asked to be let go of that contract, and they said that was fine. We signed out of that contract. Then.
So how long was the contract signed for?
I don't remember the end date, but the agreement was that either party could cancel the contract at either time. Myself or the Ukrainian government could cancel that contract.
It was a typical contract, right? I guess. Huh?
It was pretty straightforward. Yes, yes. I left there with 3 other men that I had met while in the Legion. We were looking for a new home together. We went to. We had heard about through a contact at the Legion a unit called 3rd Battalion. So we went to give them a try. We did sign contracts with them as well and trained for, again, about a week or so. But they also had a severe number of problems. They were having people leave the unit, and we didn't feel comfortable deploying with them either. So
was it also an international battalion or not?
I'm not entirely sure. I believe it was under the territorial defense, but it had ties to the Legion. Some of the names were the same.
The majority of soldiers were Ukrainian or international?
It was on the training camp. There was a mix. There was one entirely Ukrainian unit that we had no dealings with. The unit I was with had mainly foreigners. There were a few Ukrainians. There were some Russian speakers, but I'm not sure where they were from. But we also had American, British, Irish, a lot of Finnish people. So it was essentially an international group again. Yes. One of our group of 4 decided to stay with that unit and see what happened. Myself and 2 others, we decided to leave. We were let out of our contracts. And at that point, we more or less became tourists in Ukraine. We were going around some of the major cities on the western side of Ukraine, trying to find a good unit. Through various contacts, we would be sent here or sent there to say, hey, go talk to these people. We received several requests for us to become actual trainers, to just train the Ukrainians, and that was it. But unfortunately, none of those units could provide us with any kind of official paperwork, and we did not want to be in a situation where we overstayed a visa, or we had issues getting back into our home country without a visa, or we were just traveling around Ukraine without any kind of documentation. While we were doing that, talking to various people, and we were down in the Odessa-Mykolaiv region, one of our guys received contact from a previous friend of his who was in a unit in the Kharkov region, who said that we have a spot for you and we can get you documentation. So we went back up to Kyiv and waited for a few days. He sent a man for us to sign contracts, this time with the Ukrainian army, and then we went over to Kharkov.
Who was the guy who recommended you that?
The guy in our group, we all went by call signs. His call sign was Pip. The man he was speaking to, his call sign was Boxer.
They were both Americans, Westerners, or?
Boxer was a German. Pip is an American citizen, but had been living in Europe for an extended period of time.
And then you went to Kharkov, right?
Correct, yeah. On June 7th, we signed that contract and then caught a night train that sent us there. We arrived the morning of June 8th. where 3 members of that team came and picked us up at the train station. Yes, yes. We went to their compound. We were allowed to eat and get ourselves settled. We received a mission briefing in the evening for what was going to happen the next day. And then that next day we went out on the mission, and that's the day that I was captured. The mission briefing the evening before, we'd been told that myself and one of my friends would be just riflemen for security, but they changed that after the briefing and decided we would become an RPG team. He would carry the rocket launcher and I would carry extra ammunition for him. We went out that morning in trucks. We drove for about an hour to some woods outside a village somewhere near Kharkov. When we were driving there, we could hear that a battle had started. When we parked the trucks, we could tell that it had intensified and gotten closer. So they immediately changed the mission. We were put into defensive positions by the mission leader, and he said he was going to put up a drone to get an idea of the situation.
So your initial mission was what exactly?
We were told that this was a recon unit. We were expecting a recon mission with drones. The mission briefing was that they were going to do a recon, and that one element of the team would go up, and if they could, they would place a landmine on a road. But when we arrived, obviously, there was no walking to place a mine on the road. We were moved around a few different times to provide security. We could not see other elements of the team. At one point, we did see, I saw a BMP crossing a road. I notified my RPG gunner what I'd seen, so he could look. He said he saw 2 more BMPs and dismounted infantry, but we did not fire. We were moved to a 3rd position. While waiting there, other members of our team approached us and said, "Hey, we're meeting back at the trucks." We went back to the trucks. From what I can tell, I was not told, but from what I could gather, the machine gun team had gone missing, and the team leader was trying to find them. I assume the other members of the team were trying to leave. We were put, myself and my friend, we were put at our final firing position, which was to watch an intersection while the team leader looked for the machine gun team, I guess. And he said if we saw any armor, to fire on them. A short time after he left, we did see a tracked vehicle start approaching. All I saw was part of the track, so I can't be sure what it was. My friend did fire 1 shot from his RPG. I did not see an impact, and he said that he did not hit it. He said he thinks he shot in front of the barrel. After he fired that shot, he yelled, "Run," and we ran back to the trucks. We did not see any of our personnel at the truck or hear anyone.
What do you think, they ran away or what?
1 truck was already gone, so I think, yes, one left. 1 truck was left. I'm not sure where the other people were or what the plan was. We did not feel safe getting in the truck, so we ran past it into the woods. We found a hole big enough for us to lie down in, and we laid down in that hole. We stayed in that hole for about just over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 15 minutes, because we could hear fighting going on around us. There was artillery, mortar, small arms fire. We did not feel like it was safe to leave. When things quieted down, we determined that we were going to try and walk back to safety as best we could. We thought we knew the road that we had come in on, and we were going to try and walk through the woods, loosely following that road to hopefully get back. We walked through the woods for roughly 6 hours. We kept having to stop because we would hear artillery and mortars, and so we would stop. And I guess we made a wrong turn, or we didn't know where we were going. We ended up in a village where we were approached by a Russian patrol. We immediately laid down our arms and surrendered. So the only shots that were fired by us that day was the 1 RPG shot from my friend. They stripped us of all our gear. Initially, we were blindfolded and put on our knees, and we expected that we were going to be executed, but they decided not to. They did bind us and put us in their little camp, and were actually quite kind to us overall. They made sure we had food and water and blankets during the night.
Did you have any communication with them? I mean, as far as I know, you don't speak Russian, right?
Right there.
Did any of them speak English?
There were 2 of them that spoke fairly decent English, and so we could communicate well enough. Yes. Right after that's just general steps of captivity. So yeah.
At that point, did you know what happened to British soldiers that were British and one Moroccan soldier who were actually sentenced to death around that time? It was like a day or two before you got arrested. They were sentenced here in the US to death. I mean,
Right.
they're still not executed. There is an appeal going on, but they were sentenced. But it was a big news around the world. So, did you know about that?
At the time, I had not heard of that. I was told once I was in captivity that that had happened. I tried to stay up on the news while I was in Ukraine, but I could only do so much. So I was not aware of that story prior to that day.
And how do you feel about that right now?
I know that that's a possibility for me, yes.
As far as we know, you have a, sorry to say, but I mean, excuse me for saying it like that, but it is a pretty hefty pension that you have as a military veteran, more than $20,000 as I've heard. You know? So, why risk all that and come to a conflict you know practically next to nothing about? Of course, except what you saw on the media. I mean, why come at all?
Right, well, I didn't come for the money. As you said, I lived comfortably enough at home, so I did not come here to get money. I, as I've learned during the past week or so in captivity, I definitely was not receiving the full story of what is actually going on in this area. The media that we were getting in America made it seem like Russia was 100% the aggressor. And so I felt like the Ukrainian people needed help. Since I've been here, I've learned that that's not the case. It's given me a lot to think about. I realized that this war is bigger than I was led to believe, and it's not my fight.
But why did you keep on insisting to go to the front lines? I mean, when did you realize that?
Yes, of course, of course.
I mean, you were in Ukraine, if I remember correctly, for almost 2 months, right?
For about
From
2
April
months,
to
yes.
June.
Yes.
I mean, okay, you heard that one story in America, but
Right.
probably here, I mean, in Ukraine, that side of the front line, you
Right.
probably could realize that not everything is true, right? So, what kept you?
Right. So, as you mentioned, in Ukraine, it was the same story I was getting in the U.S. It's that they're fighting for their country. They were being attacked by the Russians. That's how the Ukrainians feel as well. So it wasn't until I was actually in captivity, it's the first time I've been able to speak to Russians, Russian police, Russian military, and get their side of the story. So it wasn't until I was captured, and mind you, I was on the front line for 1 day. So I didn't have a lot of frontline experience to start making that decision. It wasn't until I was in captivity and heard the other side and was shown videos of the other side that I changed my perspective on what this war actually is.
Let me ask you, you've been traveling Ukraine for 2 months,
Yeah.
right? During that time, did you witness any Russian crime against humanity, against civilian targets? Contrary to that, I can safely assume that while here, you probably heard a lot of shelling around in civilian areas. But can you just compare those two? I mean, in 2 months, did you witness any Russian activity that you could compare to what you've seen this by Ukrainians?
Yes, when I was in Lviv, before I'd even joined the Legion, the morning I woke up in my hotel and was going to go and join the Legion, the area around there was bombed, very close to my hotel. When I was in Kyiv and Odessa and all these cities, there would be incoming. I would hear the same booms that I'm hearing now.
Were there military targets or civilian targets?
I don't know. Just like here, I hear the booms, but I don't see where they're hitting, so I don't know what those targets are. I could only take the Ukrainians at their word. I can only take the Russians at their word. I personally don't know for a fact what was military and what was civilian.
While you were in Ukraine, did you witness any civilians getting killed or killed?
No combat, no civilian injuries, nothing like that.
Did you go around sites that were hit? You've heard, you've been hearing like shelling, but did you go there to see, to observe what happened on those sites that were hit?
No, I did not.
After all this experience, what would be your now perspective on this war? When you said this is a bigger war than you thought, when you came from America all the way here,
I know.
in what way it is bigger for you now?
It's bigger in that I did not realize how much Ukraine is also being the aggressor. We were told that it was just Russia and aggression against Ukraine, and that's not the case, as I found out the past few days. So my perspective has changed in that I need to realize that and understand that hopefully there can be some kind of diplomatic solution to this. I realize that the Russian people here and the Ukrainian people here are fighting for very much the same thing, it sounds like. And I think the answer is diplomacy, not war. Does that make sense?
While in Ukraine, did you see any Nazis, neo-Nazis, or Nazism as an ideology?
The only thing I saw was one swastika on a tree. I never saw anyone in Nazi uniforms or patches. I never met anyone who claimed to be a Nazi. No.
Nazi tattoos or something like that?
Nothing that I saw, no.
Now, with your perspective right now, do you realize or what do you think about Russian decision to enter this war, to start the special operation?
That's the new information that I'm trying to process. I had not realized that Russia had a defensive posture in this area at all based on the news that I had seen. So that's what I'm trying to learn, and that's why I say it's bigger than I realized, because there was a whole part missing, and that was Russia's defense of Donbass.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Did you have any idea about what was going on here for 8 years?
The way that we were, prior to January of this year, I could not tell you where Ukraine was on a map. I did not know anything about what was going on here. But in those few months before I left, the news was saying, oh yes, it's been going on since 2008, but it portrayed it as the Ukrainians were in trenches in defensive positions trying to liberate the Donbass region. It did not show that they were being aggressors in that region.
But you know, I mean, I've been coming here for a long time, my colleague too, you know. So we know that there are sources in English language, numerous sources that actually reveal what is going on. They are reporting on shelling of Donbass, shelling of Donetsk, shelling of Lugansk, murdering of Donetsk children, Lugansk children. So how come that you didn't come up to that? You didn't find any of that?
That I can't tell. I know that it has been rumored in America that when you are looking for news on Google or Facebook or YouTube, that they do use algorithms to feed you certain information. It may be that as much as I poked around, I was being fed certain lines of information. I know that a lot of the media that is generated in Russia or in Russian-friendly countries is completely banned from America. You have to really know what you're doing to be able to find that stuff, and I'm not that much of an expert on the internet. All I can say is that I did not encounter news stories like that. It would have certainly made me have a different decision about coming over here, yes.
After all this experience, what would you like to say maybe to journalists in the West, to reporters from those media that you followed in America and in Ukraine?
The same thing I've wanted to say to them for a long time, which is, tell us the truth. We know that American media has its faults and doesn't always tell us the whole truth, or a lot of times they will exaggerate or cause fear on purpose because it serves whatever purpose they have in mind. For years I've wished that they would tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I think more important, I realize I'm just a very small person and this would probably never happen, but if I'm allowed to go home, I would like to meet with our government and tell them, like, this is not the situation we're being told, and the solution is not sending more weapons and more money and more people. We have to start finding a diplomatic solution. That's my hope.
And since you mentioned, do you realize that right now, these very buildings, we may very well be hit with the American missile?
I had not thought of it that way, but yes, I understand that is a possibility, yes.
Can you confirm that NATO missiles and NATO weapons were distributed to Ukraine recently, let's say recent few weeks?
I can confirm I've seen lots of news stories saying that they were being sent. You know, I don't know what was actually sent or what actually arrived, but yes, the narrative is that weapons are being supplied, yes.
You didn't witness that firsthand, right?
No, no.
Do you think that there is a way out for you, in the sense that you maybe hope to be exchanged, or maybe offer some kind of deal, maybe reveal some secrets to your captors right now?
I would love to go home. I'm willing to cooperate as best as I can to make that happen. You know, I've tried very hard not to cause any problems and to cooperate so far.
Do you have any objections to how you were treated here while in Russian captivity?
Maybe a couple, but large.
Which ones?
I may have been beaten a few times, but like I keep pointing out, I understand. There's a lot. It's wartime. There's going to be anger. That stuff happens. I've been treated kindly more than I've been abused, and so I don't have. There's no resentment.
Where originally are you from, and how and why did you come to Ukraine, to this conflict?
I was born in Fountain Valley, California, and I moved to Hartselle, Alabama. And I currently reside in Hartselle, Alabama. Originally, when the conflict started off in February 24th, there was a lot of propaganda on the west side, and I fell for it heavily. Coming here, I thought I was doing the right thing. I was not. Originally, I came here to do humanitarian efforts, but none of those were working out. So I ended up joining the Legion. That didn't work out. After that, I ended up traveling Ukraine until I eventually ended up in Kharkov in the unit for one day, and then was engaged in combat the next morning, and was captured and surrendered that day.
You probably remember that things like that don't happen, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, when did you come to Ukraine first for the first time?
When I first came to Ukraine, it was through Poland. I took a flight from Alabama to Atlanta, Atlanta to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Krakow, Poland. There I met with a contact I made back in America. From America, through Google searches, I made a contact with a man named Tim. He got me into contact with somebody from Lithuania. The man from Lithuania got me into contact with a priest in Poland named Sasha. Eventually, when I arrived in Poland, I got into contact with Sasha, the priest. He introduced me to another group that took me over the border to Lvov, and one of their members had contacts to the Foreign Legion. I eventually called and got connected to the Foreign Legion. I ended up joining the Foreign Legion in Yaroviv, and after that we went to the Central Legion area in Rivne. I was unsatisfied with how they were supplied and how their command structure was structured, so I ended up leaving. And I traveled across Ukraine from Rivne. I went to Zhytomyr, where there was a Ukrainian army, not based there, but a training area. They were training in dorm-like structures. There was about 50 to 60 foreigners there, and approximately about, from what I saw, I would say about 100 Ukrainian either conscripts or volunteers.
You mentioned priest, right?
Priest, yes.
And how come priest comes into
the priest was a part of a humanitarian group, and I went there to initially do the humanitarian work, but I was unsatisfied with how they were operating too. They didn't have enough supplies to really do anything. Then he introduced me to the second group that had a little bit more supplies, and the second group took me like over the border. Sasha had like multiple humanitarian contacts, and one of the contacts he introduced me to was the one that got me across the border.
That was just a humanitarian effort.
Yes.
But you realize that you were crossing the border. I mean, to a war zone.
No, yes.
Right now, are you
yeah.
a little bit suspicious about everything?
Yes. They were operating out of Poland only, and I wanted to be closer or be in Ukraine when I was doing the humanitarian efforts. None of the options were working out, so that's when I decided to join the Legion.
I mean, usually people who come to be involved in humanitarian aid don't end up in the conflict, don't end up with arms fighting against another army.
I understand. It was like the situation just got worse and worse as time went on when I was traveling Ukraine. More of the options I wanted to do were not there anymore. And when we left the Legion, there was 4 of us that left initially. And when we went to Zhytomyr with that Ukrainian army group, there were other foreigners there. Same issue that I've like seen in the Legion, where they were being undersupplied and their commanding officers were incompetent. So we left again, but only 3 of us left this time. It was Bama, Pip, and myself. Pip was the one that was making all the contacts across the country.
Do you know who he was making contact with?
No, it was multiple people. Like the contacts he made kept branching off into other contacts. Like they kept breaking off and multiplying. So I wasn't one that was keeping track of it. He was. So our next lead led us to Kyiv, where Pip had 2 contacts there. One was named Martin, but he didn't really that option didn't really lead anywhere. The other one, we met him, but I can't remember his name. Was another humanitarian group, where he was providing groups across Ukraine with supplies, food, water, clothing, general necessities, boots.
At what point did you make the decision to take arms in your hands and fight?
When we were traveling.
And why?
When we were traveling again through Ukraine, we went from Kyiv to Odessa to Mykolaiv, and then that's when Pip made the contact with a group in Kharkov. And initially he told me that it was just a humanitarian group, but it wasn't. It turned out to be a recon group. And at that point I was tired of traveling Ukraine and doing nothing, because it's been about like 2 months. So when we eventually traveled back to Kyiv, we ended up signing contracts with the recon group. And in the US, a recon group does not engage in fights. They tend to just either stay in the back. But this unit was specifically a drone recon unit, so they would have or should have stayed in the back. But apparently this particular unit did not. When I got to the unit for the first day, they kept changing their plans, like mission settings, parameters. Then initially I was just a rifleman. Then I became a RPG carrier. And in the first conflict, we were surrendered and captured.
When you signed the contract, how long was the contract signed for?
I'm sorry?
How long was the contract signed for?
About 2 to 3 days of us leaving on the mission.
How long was the contract signed for? I mean, for how long did you sign the contract?
The contract can be voided at any time. Like there was no specified time frame of service. Yes.
No specified time.
No.
What was your combat experience here against Russian soldiers? Did you fight with them? Did you shoot at them? Did they trust you? I mean, what happened and what was your specialty? Let's say, what was your specific task in that combat?
Initially, my initial task was just to guard the drone operator. His name was Jesse. He was or is a Frenchman. And when like the morning came, the mission parameters changed, and they turned me into a RPG carrier. When we got to the location, the mission changed again. The Ukrainian army was retreating from Russian forces, and we were supposed to cover their escape. When Bam and I got there, again, we were loaded up with the RPG. Me and him both had a CZ-807 and 7 magazines, 1 grenade each. I was the RPG carrier. Bama was my ammo carrier. He had 2 rockets on him. I had 1. And Jesse told us to go prop up in a certain location to look down the road. When we were there for about 30 minutes, I saw Ukrainian forces retreating back, but they didn't come my way. They went down another road. About, I would say, like 5 to 10 minutes later, I saw about 2 to 3 BMPs drive up, and I believe that they were chasing the foot soldiers. I did not engage because I was not actively being engaged, and they did not go down the road I was instructed to defend. About 30 minutes to like an hour after that, we got relocated to a spot further up, originally kind of where the BMPs were, to look down a road or up a road, but it was kind of like a hill. About 30 minutes later, another colleague called 23 called us back. Me and Bama started running back. When we got back to the trucks, one of the trucks was filled with Ukrainian soldiers and drove away. And we were told to hold positions to make sure more Ukrainians can fall back. So Bama and I went to one of the intersections and was guarding that area. Jesse and the remaining colleagues went right of us into like a forest area. So after that, I did not see them anymore. No less than like 5 to 10 minutes later, I hear a tank coming up, a Russian tank, because of the loud engine, and it was shooting at a berm. The first shot hit a berm area where we were initially at the second time. Then it drove closer. It shot at another berm. When I saw it shoot at that berm, I saw the explosion, and I thought the tank was at that corner and shooting at me. So I shot the RPG at that berm, like that explosion that I saw, and I hit the berm. When I looked back, there was no tank there, but I told Alexander to run. We both ran from where like one of the trucks was. We ran about 20 to like 30 meters back into the woods into a like little hole. And then that's when I heard the truck or the tank drive up to the spot where I just shot, and it shot at the place where we were like kind of last at, and it shot about 2 to 3 times after that. Me and Bama were hiding in the hole for approximately about 3 hours, and within those 3 hours we heard a lot of infantry foot traffic walking around. At one point they confiscated the truck that was left there that we came in and drove off. The tank eventually drove off back to where it came from. I heard a lot of BMPs driving around and a lot of foot soldiers like walking around, but we were staying quiet. At one point I heard a gunfight to my front right area. I couldn't really determine the distance, but it sounded like a lot of small arms fire. Then there was a lot of artillery falling around. After the 3 hours, Bama and I decided to leave the area. We left behind the RPG and the 2 unshot rockets. I took the fuse, the charge like that you screw onto the rocket with me, so it can't be used against anybody. Then we left the area. We were hiking through the woods for approximately about 5 hours. and we ended up on a road where we encountered Russian forces, and we surrendered and was promptly captured.
Before coming to Ukraine, did you have any military or combat experience?
I had military experience, but no combat experience. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 2014 to 2018. For the first couple of years, I was just in training from where I was basic training for Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, then to Camp Pendleton for basic training and advanced training in 2014 to 15. From 2015 to like not the middle, but like early 2015, I was in Fort Leonard Wood for my job training. I was a heavy equipment operator. That's like a forklift driver for like logistical support. 2015 to 2017, I went to Okinawa, Japan for supporting logistical movements through like computer and stuff like that, but I was only doing it within my unit, like where I was based at. From 2017 to 2018, I went back to Camp Pendleton, and I was doing my heavy equipment job, just logistical support. I've never been deployed anywhere.
Right now, what would you say about your experience of fighting the Russian troops?
It was only that one day, and it was a very short like spat. I saw how disorganized the Ukrainian army was, and how organized the Russian forces were. But it was a very short spat. I don't know like what to add more to that.
Can you just ask me how come that you were actually a soldier, okay, without combat experience, but a soldier, but you say that you came here as a humanitarian?
No, again, like in the military, I was logistical support. I was not infantry or anything. Yes, we do train to fight, but that wasn't my intent when I came to Ukraine. The reason why I jumped from humanitarian to military support was because the humanitarian side in Ukraine was not like optimal. And when I joined the military side, I was just trying to do support. The Legion is not a, or like the Legion that I went in was not a fighting force. It is a security force because they are not in the front line or the second line. They are approximately about the third and fourth line. And then every other military option that we were trying to get into was some kind of support. I didn't want to be in direct fighting, and I wasn't expecting when I went to the Kharkov unit to be a direct fighting force, because again, it was a drone recon unit, not a direct fighting force.
You were in a special unit called Bandit, right?
Yeah, so from what Pip told me, they were under the SBU. The battalion I believe that they were part of was Intelligence Battalion, and this small task force was called Task Force Baguette, for like homage to most of the French foreigners that were in there. This group made up mostly of foreigners. The handler or leader of this group was a Ukrainian officer named Andre. And then the second in command, or like third in command, I guess, are two foreigners. One German named Boxer, and he was a German paratrooper. The other one was a French service member, and his name was Jesse. Jesse was the one generally calling the shots, and Boxer was like the one like there to like help out too. The other members were again mostly French. There was 23 service member, like a French service member. There was Sav, another French service member. There was somebody that came and picked us up when we got to Kharkov. His name was Red something. Like I can't remember the second part of the name. He was an American, but he was leaving the day that I arrived. So the three of us, myself, Bama, and Pip, when we got to the unit, we were replacing members that have already left. Most of the members that left were either American people or French Foreign Legion that had to leave for like personal reasons, I think. There was a American in there named Jenkins, but he did not go on to the mission with us. when we went on the mission, the people that stayed behind was, I believe, Andre, Pip, and Jenkins. Everyone else came with.
But before you came to the front lines, you probably talked with them, you had some exchanges with them. What did they tell you about fighting Russians and Russian army?
They never fought the Russian, again, because they were strictly a recon unit. When I was talking to them, they and again, keep in mind this was only for 1 day before we went on the mission, or less than a day. They said they never engaged any Russian forces. At one point, they, I think, got close to Russian forces, but they didn't do anything, and they just left. This mission was completely different from what I was told it was, because it kept changing every time when the mission started.
So when did you stay?
Again, I was expecting not to be in combat. I was expecting for it to just be a recon.
Yeah, but you say that they kept changing the mission.
No, I couldn't just leave the day of the mission because I was told by Andre and Boxer to attend the mission, but I already signed the contract, so I was obligated to go. And again, I thought it was just a basic recon mission, but it turned out not to be.
I suppose that at this point you do know about the death sentence that was ordered on the sentence on the 2 British soldiers and 1 Moroccan one.
Yes.
And you probably are aware of the realistic possibility that death may happen to you.
Yes.
So what are you thinking about that?
I know I have committed crimes, and I'm willing to accept my punishment.
What crimes? How would you describe your crime?
Fighting against Russian forces in that first battle, that one battle I was in. I shot a RPG at what I thought was a tank, but it was the berm. Then we ran away, and I found out that it wasn't the tank I shot at. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so how would you describe your crimes? You said that you're aware that you committed crimes.
Fighting against Russia, I would assume would be my crime, right?
Fighting against Donbass too.
You attend foreign wars?
Mercenary. You do know that Russia considers foreigners in Ukrainian armies mercenaries, and that the developing Russians don't apply to them.
I do now, yes.
What would you do differently if you could go back in time?
Not go to Ukraine.
And why did you come? Were you misled by the media, by friends, by...
I would say a big proportion of it was the media. That I fell for a lot of propaganda. When I came here, I saw a lot of that was not true, because none of the Western propaganda tells about how bad the Ukraine military is and how unorganized they are. And through me traveling all over Ukraine, I saw how bad it was. The Western media also said that Russian troops do just kill you off when they capture you. When I was captured, I thought that they were just going to kill me, but they ended up not. My captors actually ended up treating me better than I thought I would be treated. Food, water. At night when it got cold, they gave us blankets. When our hands and feet were bound to prevent escaping, they would adjust our blankets to keep us warm. And I know this may sound dumb, but I guess that was a humbling experience. I didn't expect that, and I guess from that moment I knew that the Western propaganda is a lie, generally.
Do you think that you are the only one who, as you say, committed crimes, or do you think that Ukrainian army in general is committing crimes?
I believe they're committing crimes. Again, from when I was traveling through Ukraine, I've seen how corrupt their like leadership is. And again, a lot of the reasons why I didn't stay in a lot of the units, because it's just the incompetence, the corruption, the lack of support from their command. When I got to Task Force Baguette, I thought it would be different, but it wasn't. It was the same thing.
Do you know that at this very moment we may be hit here by an American missile? You know what was happening in Donetsk the entire day, for example, the Donetsk was heavily shelled with American missiles by Ukrainians.
I know that now.
How do you feel about that?
Bad, guilt, mad at myself for believing like generally Western propaganda. I didn't know that this was happening in the Donbass area, and when I found out, just guilt.
What would you say to American journalists, American reporters, if you had the chance?
If I got the chance, just like, it's not what it seems, what the media is pushing out. Everyone's painting the Ukrainian military as like brave. Sure, there may be a couple brave men here and there, but generally the command is not the brave one. They're sacrificing troops. From a couple of prisoners I talked to when I was not initially captured, but when I was sent to a prison camp, I guess they were talking about how their command left them behind, and I've been noticing that more and more, like again through my travels, that the command doesn't care about the general rank and file, just leaving them behind, having no gear, no training, and the media doesn't show that or tell that, and I would like them to at least show that, tell that, like be honest at least, and I know that they probably won't.
What would you possibly say to Donbas people?
I'm sorry for believing lies from the West. I didn't know that you guys were being bombed.
You heard the bomb attack just now.
Yes. Just guilt, how stupid and naive I was to believe in propaganda. And I didn't know that this was happening. I'm sorry.
And if I may ask just one more question. There is a lot of wars right now at this very moment. In Yemen, in Syria. I mean, it's a low intensity war, but it's still going on. Why did you choose this one?
I actually didn't know about the other wars in those other areas. And again, I would probably say it was my naiveness, my stupidness to believe in the propaganda, because I saw a lot of like death and destructions that, when the Russians invaded, people are dying, they're just aimlessly killing people, and I don't think that's true anymore.
With all your traveling throughout Ukraine, did you witness any civilian targets being bombed by Russian schools, hospitals?
No.
Do you believe that civilian targets are bombed here in Donetsk and Lugansk right now?
Yes.
If these are the type of soldiers that are in the armed forces in America, we're in big trouble. Seeing those previous skirmishes that America was involved in, it wasn't involved in real wars. Those were skirmishes where America sits back from afar, bombing, shooting missiles, drones, but no men actually on the ground. So in spite of their experience, these guys were captured. And now that they are being interrogated, they are telling the Russians anything they want to know, names, places, instead of what they were trained to give, which is name, rank, and serial number. It is no surprise now why Ukraine is losing. When Joe Biden said for Americans not to go to Ukraine, I see why. Because they're not ready for what goes on in Ukraine. Well, it's evident that Zelensky has no help, and he has to fight his own war.